Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Mary Jane Burke. I work at the County Office of Education, and we're really excited to have you all join us here this morning. We're going to get an opportunity to take a look at the kinds of steps that can be taken in an early childhood environment as we do all that we can as educators to ensure that both our kids and our staffs are safe as they return to school. And so I want to thank in advance David Allen Hughes, who's going to be the person presenting to all of us this morning. David comes to this work with a great deal of background. He has served as a teacher as well as a principal in the regular education environment. In addition, he's been a business owner of multiple businesses and is also someone that holds a variety of credentials in the early childhood space. So he comes to us with all of that, but maybe more importantly, he's a dad. And like many of us who've been blessed to have children, we know how important safety is. And we look forward to hearing from David about the steps that he's been going through to ensure that staff and students are safe and well prepared to return to school. So with that, I'm going to pass. Oh, and as a reminder, this is being recorded. Any information that's provided will be available to you on the Rethinking Schools website, usually within 24 hours, if not sooner. So with that, David, take it away. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Mary Jane, and thanks everyone for being here as we talk about the importance of trying to figure out how to most appropriately reopen preschools in the safest way possible. Our preschool reopened last Thursday for a summer camp program. We started off with a sort of soft opening, if you will, where we just had the kids come for 90 minutes on Thursday and Friday so we could try and work out some kinks that may have been there. And then we started fully this past Monday. And must say it feels really good to have children back on site, and it's not quite as scary as I thought that it might be, and it's not that different, although there are quite a few differences. So I think the first thing for someone like myself, uncertainty is unsettling, not knowing what something's going to look like. These past few months, we've learned a lot about COVID-19, but there's still a lot that we don't know about it. And because of this, no one knows exactly how schools and preschools will look when we return, whether that be for summer camp programs or for your fall semester. And this uncertainty can be unsettling to even the most seasoned of professionals. I know it's definitely was unsettling to me. The other thing to consider is that the past several months, COVID-19 has become a little bit easier, it seems, for public health and others to manage. There's more availability for testing, and there's more knowledge about how COVID-19 is transmitted and symptoms and so on and so forth. And I believe that all of that information, as we continue forward in these next few months, will hopefully continue, that data source will continue to grow, which should give us all as educators and our communities a little bit more ease of mind, if you will, trying to figure out how to manage that as a community. So as we think about preschool, there's a lot of things to consider. There's a lot of questions. The primary piece is how do we ensure the safety for our students, for our teachers, for our families? And I wish there was an easy answer. There's not. But there are a lot of things that we can do that will help to increase the safety at our schools and at the same time decrease the risk to our students, to the teachers, and to the families. Every single day, I'm inspired by many of you here on the line, by my colleagues, by other professionals. There's so many important questions that get asked and so many valuable ideas and resources that are available to us. It's also overwhelming, the quantity of information and the number of questions that are out there. But your participation today in this call shows your commitment, and it's greatly appreciated, certainly by everyone, most importantly by the children who we were serving. So we are stronger together. So we should start with what we know. I should mention, first of all, that childcare centers, including preschools, have different rules and regulation than schools. And this can be really confusing for our families when they hear the governor or they hear other people referring to schools and they send their child to a preschool. They occasionally might make the confusion that when they're saying schools, they're also including preschools. And so I think as we make sure that we're talking about childcare, whether it's family childcare or childcare centers, but that childcare is different than school. So first and foremost, of course, we know that we must adhere to whatever the current state and county public health guidelines are, as well as the licensing requirements. Now is our opportunity, and it's definitely the time for us to be rethinking how school looks and how preschool looks and how we can make it feel great for our children and our teachers while trying to help make sure that we keep them as safe as possible. And without a doubt, we're not going back to the way it used to be, at least not anytime soon. And quite frankly, I would assume that we've all learned so much about disease transmission and about keeping children safe that preschools, like most other industries, will have changes that will be made, long-term changes that will help to make us better programs. And we've also learned to see just how flexible all of our teachers are, our students are, our families are. This was a very hard time. Those of you who did Zoom meetings with your children, trying to manage those of you who chose not to, trying to manage the communication with your family and keeping your children connected. That's all really difficult information and difficult things to have managed. So as we think about how we ensure the safety of our students, staff, and families as we resume preschool, what we've told our families is that our goal is, of course, to try and keep COVID-19 out of our preschool community. And we recognize that's an impossible guarantee, so we don't attempt to guarantee it, but we definitely have taken quite a few steps and measures to try to mitigate the risk and keep it outside of the preschool. There's no silver bullet, as I mentioned again. I wish there was an easy answer that we could say, oh, all you need to do is check temperatures and you're good. There's a lot more to it, of course, and a lot of other safety considerations. And each of these considerations probably add a fraction of safety, increased safety to your school. But all those fractions start adding up, and eventually you have a fairly substantial number there that's helping to keep your children safe. So we also have let our families know that if, despite our best efforts, COVID-19 does come into the preschool, we have several processes in place and systems in place to try to help to minimize the chance of it spreading. That's everything from the small cohorts to some of the other systems that we have in place. As preschool teachers and directors, we've already been very aware about, children and transmitting germs and diseases, and we've already been cleaning and disinfecting our preschools. And so there's some things that we need to do that are simply just increasing those frequencies, for example, or we've had thermometers to check kids when they haven't been feeling well, but now just making sure that we're using those to check the children more regularly based on whatever guidance it is at the time from public health and from licensing. And then also thinking about what other safety measures we might consider. So let's begin with where we are today. I'll share with you the Ross Preschool, some images from the preschool, and tell you a little bit about what we've been doing, and then we'll backtrack and tell you how we got to that point. So for starters, our educators, our teachers are wearing either face coverings or face shields when they're at work. We work with little kids, we're preschool, so let's try and make it fun. Why not decorate your face mask, make it feel a little bit more friendly. When you're taking temperature checks, one of my teachers likes to say, oh, I'm going to check your happiness meter, and then she'll take their temperature and say, oh, you're at a 98, and just making it a lot more child-centered, and that's something that you all can do with your eyes closed, if you will. We have A-frames that we've set up that have our daily health check-in questions and signage to make sure that people understand where they can and cannot access in terms of our school facility. The clear signage helps remind parents and other community members about our important safety rules. And I believe also just having it be clean and clear and crisp helps families feel just a little bit safer, knowing that we've really been thinking about all the different details. We generally do not allow parents inside the building. I'm definitely someone who's a very, much in the gray area. I tend to rarely say parents are never allowed inside, because there will, of course, be situations where a parent may have to come inside. So I often will use the word generally or whenever possible. We're encouraging our families either to do curbside drop-off or they can walk to a front gate. We ask the parents to wear a mask when they're dropped off, and when the kids come in, we take their temperature, we say hello. We take their temperature, we have them go drop their bags off, and then we have them either wash their hands or put some hand sanitizer on before they get started for the day. During summertime, we've been spending the majority of our day outside. We currently have 2 cohorts, or 2 pods, if you will, 2 groups of kids, and those kids are kept physically separated from one another. They don't really seem to mind from what we've seen. There's one example of a child who said, hey, can I go play with my buddy, who was in one of the other sections? But for the most part, they're so content with their small group of children and the activities that they have there that we haven't noticed any concerns about that. We chose to get barriers like this to make it, extra clear both to our families as well as to our children and our teachers on where they could and could not go. We're also fortunate that we have a very large outdoor space that we can divide into smaller sections. If your space is limited, I would consider looking at your daily schedule to determine whether you could stagger time spent outdoors, and also consider what supplies and equipment you're using. If you are staggering time outside using the same place, what can you easily sanitize or disinfect? For example, a ball presumably would be a lot easier to sanitize or disinfect than a teddy bear or some Play-Doh, and so that the groups aren't using shared materials between those two separate pods. I also recognize that us spending our days outside is a lot more viable right now when the weather is warm, and when it comes rainy season, of course, we'll be spending more time inside. We, working in preschools, we know that the concept of consistently socially distancing children in preschool is totally impossible. It's also not appropriate in most situations. Young children at this age need to be spending time together, and that's part of how they learn, and we're developing the foundation that will allow them to continue forward in their education and in their life. Preschoolers often spend time very, very close to one another. If they're playing with trains, maybe they're cuddled up, looking at a picture book together. And the social and emotional education that happens is critical and crucial for children. And with this in mind, some teachers might take the stand, or even directors might take the stand of, well, there's nothing we can do to keep children physically distanced from each other. Or others might even say keeping them separated during meeting time, it doesn't make any sense because they're so close to each other at other times during the day. I personally disagree with both those statements. Remember, I said at the beginning of the presentation, our goal is to keep COVID-19 out, and if it was to come in, to try to minimize the risk of it spreading. When we bring groups of kids together for activities like a story time or science projects or circle time, why wouldn't we consider if there's a way to give each child just a little bit of extra breathing room? And, just for example, just because, say, Sally and Sarah were playing close to each other all morning, it doesn't mean that Sally and Adam have to sit close to each other during circle. And there's easy ways to keep the children separated that they don't really think about, they don't notice. Many of us already use carpet squares or other things during morning meetings. When we're outside at the preschool, we're using either hula hoops, as you can see in the picture, or you could use spot markers like the ones shown on the Amazon link there, spray chalk on the ground or on grass to show where you want where you want the kids to sit. And the kids just come and they grab their hula hoop, or they grab their spot marker, or they grab their place on the ground, and they have just a little bit of extra room between one another. We're not expecting our children to be 6 feet apart at all times. We know that's impossible, but we are trying to think about how can we create opportunities that feel natural and without causing unnecessary alarm to a 2, 3, 4, or 5-year-old, but give them the opportunity to be spaced out. We've also made some other changes at the preschool. Like with everything else, these sneeze guards that you see here, they will not single-handedly prevent COVID-19. However, they can certainly help to mitigate or reduce the risk of the germ transmission. Just yesterday, I was sitting with the kids, and one of them was having snack, and she sneezed and forgot to cover her mouth. Totally normal for a preschooler. And this sneeze guard definitely, helped to stop some of the germs from spreading to the other kids. And we've all been there when a child has sneezed and suddenly they spray their sneeze all over the lunch of the kids who are sitting at the table with them, and having something like a sneeze guard can definitely help to make that a little bit safer. Our kids don't seem to care if the sneeze guards are set up. They can still see each other. They can still chat with each other. Some of our teachers have had their students displaying drawings on their section that they sit at during lunchtime, create a tic-tac-toe using whiteboard markers. In some respects, these sneeze guards could be one of those silver linings in preschool that has sort of plussed the preschool experience in some respect for the kids. And there's a slide that will come up later that shows some of the places that we have found that. We can also, the ones that we have, we can easily pick up and move, whether it's inside or outside. Given that this summer we're spending the majority of the day outside, we're fortunate we have this Vegas-style misting system to cool everyone down. However, a hose and a sprinkler is just as good, and being outside with with a sprinkler. What fun for preschoolers to be able to run around and get wet and enjoy. We've been asking our families to bring have the kids wear their bathing suits underneath their clothes on the hot days, so that it's just one less step for us to have to be in close contact with the child to help them put on the bathing suit. We all know carpets and rugs and other fabric items in our classrooms have been incredibly difficult to properly clean, much less to disinfect. And while, of course, we don't expect that most preschools could justify the cost to remove their carpets, you should absolutely look at what you can remove to help keep the kids safer. For example, rugs or dress-up clothes or teddy bears or pillows or items like this that are porous or fabric that are really difficult to clean. So how we arrived at today. We were talking with our families, and one of the first things that we talked about within our school was the physical space. So what will the physical space look like? First and foremost, we want to make sure that we're adhering to the guidelines from the CDE, from licensing, from public health. We looked to other countries who had either never closed or those who reopened earlier than the USA did, and wanted to try and figure out what inspiration can we get from them? What can we learn from these other countries? We leveraged social media groups. And thought about, look to see what these other spaces and these other people were doing. So, little things, for example, having a touchless garbage can, again, that's not the silver bullet, but can that help just a little bit to stop germs from being transmitted, whether or not we're talking about COVID-19 or the common cold or whatever it might be. I think all these discussions will help to make preschools a little bit healthier going forward. And I do personally subscribe to the belief that children do need to get sick to build their immune system, but they certainly do not need to unnecessarily get sick, especially with things like COVID-19. So as we talked about what other schools we're looking at, you can see these children here. I believe this was a school in Taiwan where they're sitting during lunchtime having sneeze guards. And I was like, oh, well, that's such a great idea. But I didn't like what I saw in that these kids could not see each other. That was one of my concerns with it. And the other concern was that the sneeze guards didn't actually come out past the edge of the table. And so kids don't eat with their face above the table, they sit a few inches behind it. But I looked, and that was a sort of a jumping off point for inspiration. There's this link that will be shared on the MCOE website where you can look more closely at the summary of health and safety practices that are happening all around the world, and to try and get other ideas about what other people have been doing in other countries. So some of the Facebook groups that I leveraged on social media, I went to this group called Early Childhood Professionals, another one for Reggio-inspired early childhood educationers, childcare preschool directors and owners in California. And just, we're looking through these, posting questions, asking questions, and seeing from the group collective what other information we could learn. The tricky thing with all of this is everyone who's in different counties or different states or different countries, the information that is found is sometimes not totally accurate, and sometimes it's totally wrong. And so you just need to be careful, of course, to look at everything with a lens of critical thinking and problem solving as you look and see the information that's getting posted. We started with communicating with our families and our staff members. So as I mentioned again, childcare centers have different rules and regulations, as you all know, than schools, which was confusing for some of our families. It's a challenge to sort through all the information. Some of it seems to change every hour. Some states do this, some counties do that, some countries do this. My friend who works in another school told me this was the law. At the end of the day, of course, stick to what local public health department and licensing says. We've also been trying to listen to what others are doing in other countries to see if we notice a trend that we think might likely become a requirement in our state or our country or our county, so that we can be ahead of the curve, whether it's ordering hand sanitizer before everyone needed to order hand sanitizer, or getting sneeze guards before the clear acrylic started to sell out or get a lot more expensive, and different pieces like that. We invited all of our families to have a Zoom meeting with us. We wanted to share what it was that we had been doing. We wanted to hear any questions, answer any questions, hear any concerns. Some of the things that we did, we asked all of our teachers to get a COVID-19 test. You can get them for free. It's very quick. It's very easy. You can get that here. I got mine in Santa Fe over by Home Depot. We asked all of our parents to sign a waiver and confirm that they had read our updated policies and procedures, which are public to all of you. You can go to our website, therosspreschool.org/COVID, or just go to therosspreschool.org and click on the link for COVID. And you can see a ton of information about what we did and what we're doing to help keep children and teachers and families safe. So part of what we did, we surveyed our families both in March as well as again in May to see who was ready, and we found that there was a decent number of families who were ready to come back right away, some who were a little bit more of a wait and see, and then others who were not ready whatsoever. During that time, we also shared our protocols. We wanted to come from a position of strength and say, this is what we are doing, and encourage our families to read what we were doing, encourage them to ask us questions, get some feedback from them, and then we made updates to our program from there. Obviously, like all of you, safety is our #1 priority. And we also shared a letter in May to our families with a scenario document regarding what the schedule or the program might look like next year, tuition, so on and so forth. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes. There was a question about how often teachers get tested. So we are asking our teachers, from what I've understood, the general rule of thumb is once a month or so. Because we're doing 3-week sessions, we've been asking our teachers to get tested towards the end of the 3-week sessions or right after the 3-week session. So that as we go into a new session, we have a baseline. It's important to recognize that if you get tested for COVID-19 and your test comes back negative, that there's no reason that you can't walk outside and somebody sneezes on you, or you go grocery shopping and you get sick 10 minutes later. We understand that, but at the very least we have a baseline, and that helps with the communication with our families, and it helps to create an additional sense of safety and for our families to know that we're taking this really seriously. So you can see some of the survey results from when we had, and some of the questions that we asked our families back in May before we opened. And then we did a Zoom meeting where we checked in with the families before we opened and said, let's talk about some of our new protocols and policies, and make sure we heard any concerns they might have, and had a sort of a face-to-face, if you will, before we actually opened. Let's move on from there. Some other FAQs, good to know information. I mentioned our website. We have 2 separate groups at camp. I mentioned that our parents are signing a document beforehand. We had parents who had previously registered for 1-week sessions, and of course now the rule is that they have to do minimum 3-week sessions. So we had to deal with the finances behind that, and crediting people or refunding them. And we've let our families know that if for any reason we cancel camp midsummer, we will give them a prorated refund. And I think this gave some parents, especially those who are having, financially it makes a big difference what they're paying. We closed in March, and we were closed for several months, and our families did not get tuition reimbursement for the most part. And that's a big hit for a lot of families, and we understand that, and we respect that, and we appreciate that. So as we dip our toes into coming back, we wanted to make sure our parents had our assurance, at least for summer camp, that they would receive a refund if we were to cancel. Our children in each group, as we mentioned a little bit before, they are not socially distanced. We do not expect our kids in the individual pods or groups to stay 6 feet apart at all times. We know that's impossible, but we do have the things like the sneeze guards and the hula hoops and other things to try and create opportunities where they are spread out at some times during the day as well. And if a kid needs a hug or needs to get comforted or needs a Band-Aid, of course, we're not just going to sit there and watch them cry. We're going to go and make sure that we comfort them, because that is who we are. But we can do that and be smart about it without putting our face directly in front of their face, and trying to think about shared air and so on and so forth. Again, none of these are silver bullets, but at least we can make some choices to help mitigate risk. I think with everything, we're all in this together with our families. Trust is paramount. You need to make sure that your parents know that they can trust that you are doing the best possible. You're just by you being here on this call, being able to share. I've spent time on Zoom meetings, attending different calls. We've read best practices. We've been in contact with, public health or with licensing and whatnot. But the parents and every single child, of course, is depending on you to make informed choices based on the guidance and best practices from these various entities. we were fairly strongly worded with our families as we came back to summer camp. As we all know, people have different levels of tolerance and risk concerns about COVID-19. But long story short, we told our families, if you think COVID-19 is a hoax, or if you don't have any worries about COVID-19, then this might not be the summer program for you to come to. And we gave them some examples, if you're going shopping and you're not wearing a mask, or if you're having friends over for dinner parties, please don't come to our summer camp. And we wanted to make that really clear. The restrictions might change as public health guidance is updated, and the restrictions hopefully continue to loosen, and we will update our guidance for our families and our expectations for our families at that time as well. The other piece to consider is the multiple scenarios for scheduling. What will your program look like next year? And this is a huge hot topic, of course, for preschools as we think about what will our school look like next year? Can we continue to do the same program we did previously, or do we need to change it? What about these pods? What about the space? What about the number of classrooms that we have? There's so many questions around this. And I've had conversations with quite a few preschool directors. Some of them have not told their parents anything about next year. And their parents may very well expect that preschool is going to look the same, or at least have the same schedules. And if you think that it's a possibility that your preschool might look different or have a different schedule, I really encourage you to start putting together what some of those potential scenarios might look like and send them off to your families, because at some point here, soon enough, you're going to need to ask for tuition for the start of the school year, and you're going to need to make sure that your families understand that there will be at least some changes related to that structure. So for developing different scheduling scenarios or what your program might look like, we started with what we know, like what were the rules for summer camp, so that children couldn't be in groups of more than 10 or 12, depending on the guidance, stable groups of children. And then also what we don't know, how are these rules going to change? And we can make some assumptions based on having heard from Tony, the superintendent of California schools, just did a big announcement a few days ago about what the public school system is going to look like. And so maybe we look at that and see what do we think is likely to trickle down to the childcare to preschools. So, of course, making sure we're following the best practices and the best guidelines. We shared with our families about what our group sizes would look like, that the groups would be in separated rooms whenever possible, that the teachers would remain with single groups of kids and not be switching, back and forth, that we wouldn't have specialist teachers for the time being, like the music teacher who goes from school to school to school, or from classroom to classroom to classroom, just to help to mitigate risk in case that teacher happened to be sick. And we developed multiple scenarios. So our preschool historically offered a program from 8:30 to 1 with an aftercare program that was run separately from 1 until 3. And while of course we want to continue the schedule that we've had, we liked it, we believe it's likely that we're going to need to make some changes, possibly even significant changes. So at a minimum, we would expect that we would need to create a staggered drop-off and pickup schedule. So it doesn't always start at 8:30, maybe it's between 8:30 and 8:45, or depending on how big you are, between 8:30 and 9. Or if you have multiple classrooms, one classroom comes at this time, another classroom comes at this time. Even thinking about where those families come into your program. If you have multiple entrances, maybe, classroom A or group A comes in on the side gate and classroom B comes in on the front gate. And thinking about those different pieces just to help keep everyone separated from one another. We see ourselves, the Ross Preschool, we provide a service to our families and to the community. And in the past, we used to allow parents to choose either 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days a week. And we were really flexible in what days that they could choose. And recognizing that we'll most likely need to create stable groups of children, in our letter, which is going to be available on this PowerPoint that's published on MCOE's website. It's in the resource section at the end of this PowerPoint. We alerted our families that they will likely need to choose either the standard sort of Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or a Monday through Friday schedule, but that the more random schedules are likely something that we will not be able to accommodate, at least for the time being. There was a question about temperatures taken. We are taking children's temperatures or checking their happiness factor, as one of our teachers says, as they first walk into the gate outside. And then we are also checking them at snack and lunchtime while they're sitting down, just to be extra safe. And at the same time, we're checking the kids, we're checking the teachers. So due to cohort sizes prescribed by licensing and public health, we thought it was very likely we might need to fully imagine what our preschool program structure or schedule look like. One of our ideas is, what if we created a morning program for our younger children because they're still napping, and a separate afternoon program for our older children? That, of course, doesn't work for many families. Many families need need preschool not only because of the important social emotional education and the pre-academic skills that they learn, but they need childcare so that they can go to work. So we understand that this will definitely not work for every family or every school, but this is one of our many scenarios that we looked at, is to do a part-day morning program followed by an afternoon program. We understand we had several families who, quite frankly, just don't want an afternoon-only program, but they understand, most of them, that this might have to be the reality for the time being. We had several families who have children in both of our classrooms, the younger classroom and the older classroom, so we didn't think it's fair for them to have to do 2 drop-offs and 2 pickups, and also the health department recommended keeping siblings together whenever possible. So considering all these pieces when you're creating schedules and scenarios, how to deal with teacher staffing, how much do you charge for this? How do you figure out how much this needs to cost? We understand that the moment licensing has seemingly said that it's not an option, that there could be a teacher in both the morning program and in the afternoon program. I personally believe this guidance will have to change at some point here, because we already have childcare issues in California, and there's simply not enough qualified teachers. And I can't imagine that this will continue, but I might be wrong. So that's why it's one of our multiple scenarios. And we don't know what scenario we'll end up choosing, and it's very possible we'll adapt an additional scenario from some of the ones that we've already created. We're still waiting for a little bit more guidance from licensing as it relates to cohort sizes and shared teachers, but we can think strategically and methodologically consider what some of the contingency plans could be. And then from there, once things are more or less confirmed from licensing, we'll be able to use our scenarios and tweak them to get something great in place. Of course, preschool tuitions will need to look different next year. We all will have increased costs related to EPE, things like thermometers or hand sanitizer, disinfectant, as well as the increased payroll costs that we will all have in order to pay our teachers to have enough time to properly and thoroughly clean and disinfect their classrooms and the overall facility. And then if the small cohort group requirements continue, that's going to impact us in terms of spacing needs, as well as in terms of payroll and number of teachers. So I personally believe, if you haven't shared information with your families about what next year might look like, some different scenarios, as well as some potential increased tuition, you might consider doing that as soon as possible, because you may find that some families simply cannot work with the changes to your program or your schedules, and some might not be able to afford the necessary increases in tuition. And you want to make sure you have sufficient time to fill those spaces before school starts, so you don't find yourself in even worse of a situation financially, if you will. There's, of course, a possibility that at some point next year, our community might go back into a stricter shelter in place, which might require you to close again or make other adjustments. So make sure you have an admissions agreement that your parents sign that clearly spells out the terms. If you didn't before, now's a great time to add something about a force majeure, or the sort of acts of God clause, if you will, and possibly even include some type of COVID-19 specific disclaimer. We've shared a sample on here, which is just that, a sample. Please make sure if you do use something like this, you have it reviewed by an attorney, because we can't represent that this is the one that you should be using, or if it's even foolproof, quite frankly. And you might want to also consider your billing practices. For example, some schools take a deposit from each family, and then they use that deposit towards the last month's tuition payment. Maybe that's something you need to do if you're not doing it currently. Maybe you need to consider increasing the deposit so that you have a little bit more of a buffer in case you were to have to unexpectedly shut down next year in the middle of the year. But these are all different things to think about. Looks like I'm running short on time here, so I'm going to try and run a little bit more quickly through these last couple of pieces here. Thinking about some of the EPE or essential protective equipment, thinking about what supplies you should consider. We have found lots of items to be back ordered, so don't wait until school starts to place your orders for things like hand sanitizer and masks, which I know some places like Marin Child Care Council, they have some funding available. If you go to mc3.org for Marin County preschools or childcare, you can go and check that out. They've also been doing some supply drops and giveaways. taking temperatures each day, we touched upon. If you want a good product, we use this product, the IR200. Make sure you have extra batteries. Think about the instructions. So you have to have kids hold up their hair, if you will, so that you can reach a clear forehead so that you can get accurate temperatures. Preschool spend a significant amount of time, or kids on the floor, thinking about whether or not you might consider indoor house shoes, or having kids wear socks when they come inside. Or if you wanted something a little bit more commercial, there's this thing called the Sanistride shoe disinfecting mat. It's like a spongy foam. You put disinfectant on, and the kids and teachers walk on it before they come into the building, and anything theoretically, or many things on their shoes get pulled off before they walk into your building. We've thought about what the physical space would look like. We need bigger step stools, perhaps, or sturdier ones, so that we can use more of our sinks, so that we can spread the kids out while they're washing hands. We bought these toilet flush adapters so that our kids have one less touch point in the toilet, and one less thing for us to remember to disinfect after each use, so it just flushes automatically. We were concerned that kids would be scared by them. And so far with 20 kids, we've only had one kid who sort of raised an eyebrow about it. I saw a note about not being able to download our sample document in Google Docs. We'll try and make sure that we update the slideshow so that, and maybe MCOE can put that up so that you can see that as well. Here's some of the sneeze guard. You'll be able to review this on their website to see where you can find different sneeze guards. But for example, here's one from Staples and from Amazon. We thought about lots of little details, everything from our door stops, like can we get a different door stop that we don't have to touch with our hands and drill those into our doors? Where do our kids stand while they wait to use the bathroom? You know, we're preschool, let's have some fun, let's put some paw prints on the ground. You could, of course, simply put masking tape on the floor, but we all know that kids benefit from having clearly marked spaces on the floor. Thinking about where kids line up or where parents are waiting outside, we took some spray chalk and some stencils, and every 6 feet or so on our outdoor play area, on the sidewalk outside of our school, we sprayed little stencils to help remind families of where they should be waiting if there are multiple families lined up. And Michelle posted to the chat one of the PDFs that hopefully will work. And then inside of our spray area, we also sprayed stencils a little bit closer together, but just so that our kids have a little bit more breathing room than typical preschoolers who tend to line up, you know, shoulder to shoulder. We wanted to try and figure out ways to space them out wherever we could. We put these magnet strips. These were actually from lockdown procedures we've had previously. You buy them on Amazon, and they keep, the doors are locked, but the latches don't lock, if you will, so that the door, you can just push it open. So for us going in one direction, we can just push the door with our elbow or our foot, and the door opens up. For a lockdown, you remove the magnet, you close the door, and now the door is automatically locked. It's an awesome product that we love, but it's been, you know, also been able to work for COVID-19. Walt Disney used to want to know how long would a park patron go with trash in their hand before they would just let it drop on the ground, and they found their answer was about 30 feet. So you'll find at Disneyland there's trash cans about every 30 feet. We thought about our teachers and the same concept for disinfectant spray bottles. How far would a teacher go to grab a disinfectant spray bottle for, you know, a minor job they might need it for? So we tried to make it as easy as possible and hang disinfectant bottles, spraying or spray bottles all around our classroom. We're also thinking about what products we use to spray or that we use to clean our classrooms. We use this product here called Benefect Decon 30. It's a hospital grade botanical disinfectant. It's made from thyme oil. I had a parent who told me a few days ago that they had to take their kid to the grocery store. They didn't have a choice. And they went to the grocery store, put their kid in the shopping cart, and their child now has a nasty burn from a chemical that they must have been using to disinfect the carts. And now she's had to go to the doctor because of that. So I think about ourselves and our kids who spend so much time in the building, touching the floor, touching our toys. What products are we using? Many preschools use bleach. Just remember, bleach is a very strong chemical, and if it's not used appropriately, it can be dangerous. It also is something that you need to make sure that you don't use the same bleach solution multiple days in a row, because after 4, 5, 6 hours, bleach mixed with water doesn't work anymore, and a lot of people don't necessarily recognizing that. And also to be very careful if you're spraying bleach, because it's really bad for little kids' lungs. So use a sanitizer bucket and a rag or something like that. Check in with the material safety data sheets. And as we get close to finishing up here, we share our space with a church, which I know a lot of preschools do, to help create a physical barrier in a shared hallway. We put up this mounted shower curtain. It makes a physical barrier from visibility, and hopefully also just to help reduce the amount of air that's getting shared between our different buildings. And if you haven't already done touchless attendance, we use this program called Family, but there's lots of other programs that exist, Brightwheel, Run Sandbox, that you might consider that are great for billing and messaging and touchless attendance and things along those lines to help manage your preschool, but also, again, to help reduce one of the touch points from families having to use shared pens or come into a building. With Family, our families can log in on their app on their phone. They can sign their kid in as long as they're within a couple hundred feet of the preschool and tell us what time they're going to be picking up and who's going to be picking up. And we share photos and so on and so forth. So those can be really helpful. You know, hopefully the comeback is stronger than the setback that we've all had. And I really appreciate you taking the time. I know I went a little bit over, sorry, Michelle. The website to look at for additional resources is right here listed on your screen as well.
Yeah. So David, thank you very, very much. And David, also thank you for answering the questions as they were coming up in the chat. We really appreciate it. There's still a few questions about having access to the materials, and just to know that this is recorded and you're going to be able to print the materials that will be posted as part of the website, Rethinking Schools. So I do have the opportunity, Aideen Gademore is on this call somewhere, and she's the executive director of the Marin Child Care Council. So she's going to say just a couple of words. Aideen, thanks for joining us. Aideen, you're on mute right now. Oh, Michelle, can you unmute her? Maybe I can.
There.
Yes, you've allowed me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes, thank you. Thank you for letting me just step in for a moment. Most of you know Marin Child Care Council is our local state-funded organization that are here to support childcare programs in the county. We have been working very hard to try and support you guys as much as we can through this time, and we want to say thank you to all of you. We know how hard you're working and how difficult it is, and the decisions you have to make about reopening and coming back into the childcare world has presented so many challenges. So I just wanted to give you just a few reminders. Please check out our website, mc3.org. We do have funding for supplies that has come through the state, which we are distributing to providers. So if you fill out that application, we can get you funding. And those funds can be spent on cleaning supplies, or for example, the sneeze guards that Dave was talking about, that would be something that you could spend this funding on. So please take this opportunity to do that. Also, if you can make sure to get onto our mailing list, you can email Michelle, M-I-C-H-E-L-E, at mc3.org. We do have supplies that we've been doing drive-through pickups. Yesterday, we had 140 providers drive through to pick up touchless thermometers, wipes, disinfectant. And so as we get more supplies in, we'll be notifying you. They're all free, they're all for you. So make sure you take advantage of that. We also have plenty of trainings on. Our next training is the 16th, which is on the social and emotional well-being of children during this, with our own presenter, Michelle Tyler and Suzanne Cruiser from Help Me Grow. And then June 23rd, we have a follow-up question and answer for programs as they start reopening. Some of the things that are coming up, we'll hopefully be able to answer some questions and get more information. We are in touch with the Licensing Weekly and the Early Learning and Care Division. So we are as updated as we can be with things changing every day. But if you get on that mailing list, as soon as information comes out, we are posting it out to our childcare community. I'd also recommend you check out our Facebook page, Marin Child Care Council, because we update along with our email. We'll do Facebook and our website. So yes, just please know we are here. We are mandated to be here for you. We are working very hard to reach everybody. We are doing the best we can, but we just want to make sure that as you reopen, that you are getting the supports you need as teachers and educators, and also the children and the families you serve. So feel free to email me directly, Aideen at mc3.org, or one of our team, and we are all here to help you. Thank you so much, Mary Jane, for letting me have my little say, and I appreciate everything you're doing. And thank you, David. That was a very informative presentation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. David, thanks so much for the thoughtful presentation. Thanks, Aideen, back at you for all you're doing to support our community. So hopefully You will all be interested in joining us next week on Tuesday. The presentation will be from our independent and parochial school partners. We're going to hear from Travis Brownlee from Marin Academy, Chris Mazzola from Branson, and Chris Valdez from Marin Catholic. And they're going to be talking about how it is that they're viewing next steps related to high school opening. So with that, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.